Today's episode of the Buckets and Brightside podcast, Jonathan and I recap Missouri's last two games, the 70-55 loss against Memphis and Monday's big 17-point win over SIUE. We talk about where the rotations currently stand with this team, what to make of the heavy dose of the seniors, Noah Carter, Nick Honor, and Sean East. And we start to preview Missouri's game on Thursday against Minnesota. But first, the Killers.
My dream, and I'll share with you because you guys are listening, my dream is to become a national champion.
Away, Brown with a steal.
Hodge moving down, Bell throws it over for Golston. He's got it.
English. That'll line him up again. The three, baby. Johnson. Missouri wins.
One day, like I said, we will cut down nets, hold up trophies. We will raise banners.
All right, Buckets and Brightside, episode 3. This is the morning after a back on track win for the Tigers, 68-50 over SIU Edwardsville. Almost botched that out of the gate. Alongside Jonathan Lidskin. Tigers are 2-1. Should we be feeling better than we did on Saturday morning? Or, I mean, it's always nice to avoid the bye game loss, but should we feel about the 18-point win last night?
Yeah, ultimately a slow start out of the gate for Mizzou last night. Led by 7 at the half. It was pretty much even for the entire first half, but really turned it on defensively in the second half. I saw a stat last night that this was the lowest points per possession defensively for Mizzou since the Lindenwood game last year.
Yeah.
So in terms of just like raw data, the best defensive performance in a very long time for the Tigers. Obviously, you mentioned before we got this started, still a lot of stuff going on rotation-wise that they're figuring out. But yeah, a win they needed and a team that ultimately encouraging stuff last night.
I'm glad you mentioned the rotation part of it because I think that's still huge. Gates talked about on the presser on Friday night. He said, it's early in the season, all this stuff. There's a lot that still needs to be figured out, and it's kind of too early to tell, what's going to be what. Feels like even after yesterday, there's still a lot of questions. Like John Tonje, who didn't play a single minute in the first game of the year against Arkansas Pine Bluff, then played limited minutes against Memphis, actually got the start on Monday night against SIUE, scored 5 points in 18 minutes. Didn't see a ton of him, shot 1 of 5 from the field. But it feels like, I guess, early in this season, when we're still trying to figure out with the 11 newcomers and Caleb Grill is still figuring out his spot in the rotation, and the freshmen like Ant Robinson and Trent Pierce still trying to get their footing. Feels like Gates is relying a lot on his veterans. It's been a heavy, heavy dose of Sean East, Nick Honor, and Noah Carter. Last night, Carter actually on his 23rd birthday, 15 points at 4 3-pointers, including 3 in a row at 1 point. Sean East, again, leading the team in scoring, I believe, for the third. I guess Bates led at the first game, but East was like a point or so back. Back-to-back games, Sean East leads the team in scoring, 20 points, was 8 of 11 from the field, hit 2 3-pointers. He's already fairly close, matching last year's 3-point total, which is crazy. You think he had 13 all of last year. He's already 8 or 9 this year. And then Nick Honor, who actually got injured, I think with a wrist or an arm injury in the first half, didn't return. Gates said afterwards that, he was healthy enough to come back. Gates just didn't want to put him back in. But are you surprised about how much they're relying on these three and how long can they do this for? Because I don't think they can do this for a 30-game season.
Yeah, I'm not super surprised by how veteran heavy they are right now. You can look around college basketball right now. There are a lot of teams that have a ton of transfers and new pieces that are struggling. And when you bring back 3 guys like Honor, Carter, and East, who know the system, it's important. Dennis even said, I think in the preseason that he couldn't lose Nick Honor. As important as Kobe Brown and Demoy Hodge were last year, he couldn't lose his point guard. And hopefully Nick's healthy because you need a guy like that, a road game against a tie major team on Thursday in Minnesota. But Yeah, I'm not super surprised by that. And I think overall, like, I didn't, I had some stuff going on last night, so I didn't watch the game live, but I went back and watched it last night after it went final. And just one thing I noticed about Sean East, like, once again, like I mentioned this, he's doing such a good job just picking his spots and playing a lot smarter basketball. Like, there was a play where I forget who it was, but he got a ball screen set for him, and his defender went under the screen. And last year, like, that would have been so easy for him just to like take the three, because obviously the system encourages taking shots when you're open. But he was smart about it. He drove to the rim, kind of used his shoulder to get into his defender, and finished over him instead. Created a much easier opportunity for himself. And yeah, he's playing very confident basketball. He's playing very smart basketball right now.
As you guys know by now, we've partnered with BetMGM Sportsbook for this college basketball season. We're going to be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks and predictions throughout the college basketball season. And we are going to have special offers for you, the listeners and the viewers on the Field of 68 each and every week during the season. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use the bonus code FIELD1500 and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager on BetMGM Sportsbook. Here's what you got to do. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using the bonus code FIELD1500. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if that bet loses. Just make sure you use the bonus code FIELD1500 when you sign up. And remember, BetMGM is now available under one wallet in select states. As a New Jersey resident, this is super convenient for me when I have to go cover games in New York or Philly. When crossing state borders, just log into your existing account instead of having to create new accounts in each state that you go to. And most importantly, I got to let you know, we do have some fun stuff coming up for this college basketball season. Bet insurance tokens, college hoops odds boosts, my personal favorite, parlay odds boosts. So download the BetMGM app today.
I like the way East played a lot on Friday, especially in the first half. I think he had 14 points alone, and he was actually doing kind of the thing you just mentioned. He got a couple really open look threes from getting around screens, and I mean, he had the separation. He pulled up, he had two of them, both in the late stages of that first half. This is a guy that we couldn't really trust a lot from three-pointer last year. And it's weird because the fans aren't huge Sean East fans. Like, you can never ask him, Mizzou fan, no one's favorite player is Sean East. He's a great defender. He is a pretty good ball handler. And now he's shooting the ball better. Like, if this team's going to want to make a run, into March and then into April, as the team has expectations for, it feels like a lot of people are going to have to get behind Sean East, and he's going to have to keep playing like this, but even better. And we mentioned getting into March and April. I think this is a major discussion point for this point of the year and what went wrong on Friday. This team was up 14 points against Memphis in the first half, and then was down very early into the second half because Memphis was on a run. Quinterly was getting baskets. Watson, their power forward, was hitting a lot of nice shots. And all of a sudden, Memphis had the lead, and there was a 7-point deficit with 10 minutes left. And Missouri was looking around for Kobe Brown, and he wasn't walking through the door. They had no alpha to turn to. It was a lot of guys, including Caleb Grill and Honor, was missing a lot of good three-pointers. They shot 6 of 28 total from beyond the arc in the Memphis game. Grill was 1 of 8. Carter was 1 of 4. Honor did shoot 2 of 3, but they went to combine 0 of 11 from the bench shooting threes. Memphis isn't the toughest team they're going to play all year. They got Kansas coming up in a few weeks. They got Illinois in a few weeks. What's going to happen against these good teams? Who can this team trust when we get to that point that can maybe fill that Kobe Brown role? Or is it possible that, they're just going to need to execute the offense differently?
Yeah. They did a lot more last night of like just throwing the ball to Noah Carter at the elbow. And obviously, like, that's something they did with Kobe Brown last year, where they just like could throw it to him at his spot and he would go get them a basket. And like, Noah Carter won't do that against high majors in the same way that Kobe Brown did last year. I think what ultimately they're going to have to do to have success is they're going to have to run a lot more sets than they did last year. And that's something I didn't really like. I noticed it last night. I noticed a couple like definitive, like, hey, they have sets here that they got a bucket off of. They came out and ran blind pig for a layup on the first play of the game to Sean East. But like ultimately, like this was a concern that we had in the preseason. Like who's the alpha on this team? And
Still don't know the answer.
maybe we'll see that as the season goes along, but if that's Sean East, like as good as he's playing, I don't know if that's the answer you want. And like we'll see. Like this season has a long way to go, and they still have time to figure this out. But right now, like they need someone who can go and get them a bucket when Memphis is making a run and they're in a dry spell, like they were last year.
It feels like Noah Carter. Let's say Noah Carter has to be the guy, but that's the guy right now they trust the most, and that goes back to what we were just mentioning earlier about the heavy dose of Honor, Carter, and East, where it's been a lot of feeding those guys in the offense who are taking the most shots. How do we make of some of the newcomers who have been, I don't want to say struggling lately, but haven't really hit their footing? Tamar Bates was awesome in the opener, 21 points. He scored 6 against Memphis, and then last night didn't do much, just 5 points. Caleb Grill was like 2 for his first 13 3-pointers as Missouri Tiger. Eventually hit 2 in the third quarter or the early stages of the second half last night. We still haven't seen a ton of John Tonje yet. 1 of 5 last night, scored 5 points. The freshmen, obviously 3 games into their career, still finding their footing. What do we make of the newcomers, and when can we start expecting them to take a bigger role? Because I think we both expected Caleb Grill to have a huge part of this offense early in the year, and he has. The shots just aren't going in. And like maybe eventually when they do, we can maybe put him in the alpha category. And it's like, hey, this guy can hit a 3-pointer at any time. He's a great defender, which he has been. He's also been like their leading rebounder for 3 games, or almost, which is just as shocking, but he's a great player. Like, what do we make of the newcomers, and at what point can they really take that next step and join the East Honor Carter category?
Yeah, I want to start here with Ant Robinson because like this is
great.
This is their lowest ranked freshman of the 3 they brought in, and like what I noticed is like he's not gonna score a bunch, he's not gonna do anything like spectacular, but he plays really really hard, and if he's gonna do that defensively and be aggressive driving to the rim, like he's gonna get minutes, and like I think that's the main takeaway I'd have from the newcomers last night. Caleb Grill, like he hit the two threes, which were actually pretty big because they were early in the second half, and it kind of sparked the run that this team went on to put the game away and extend the lead. But I mean, 6 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, like 4 fouls in 23 minutes isn't super great, but like he's just a guy that's gonna do a lot of different things for this team. And I don't know if he ends up being the alpha, but when he's hot, he can hit a bunch of threes. Like we saw that last year. And, you know, this team's going to play small a lot. You get 5, if he's going to be a guy that's going to rebound at his size, like it's good stuff.
I really like how this team is playing defensively. Even Memphis, like they give up 70 points. Like 70 points isn't a ton. Like that's about like where I feel like they kind of should be. Like if I told you Friday morning Memphis would score 70 points, what percentage would you give that Missouri would win, or Memphis would win for that matter?
Like 15-20%.
Yeah, like it was 70 to 55, and if Missouri just hits a couple of those shots, and think about how many baskets in transition Memphis got as a result of missed 3-pointers and long rebounds, and just the way that Memphis plays, you know, running downhill. Like I think that game, I'm not saying that game was like fluky, but it was a result of its one team shooting 19% from 3 and not hitting really any in the second half. I think they're miles better through 3 games this year than maybe they were through 3 games last year. Because last night, 16 minutes without a field goal for SIUE, it was something insane. Missouri's defense, it was them missing shots, but it was Missouri's defense really clamping. But we saw the same thing against Arkansas Pine Bluff last Monday. So maybe it's not just fluke; it's kind of can be a trend that this team can be pretty fighting defensively.
Yeah, the bar for being better defensively than they were last year isn't super
low.
high. Like they were very turnover reliant defensively last year, and they're going to be again, I think. Last night, something I noticed, SIU Edwardsville did a really good job breaking the traps in the first half, and they hit a bunch of tough twos. So I think things kind of balanced out in the second half with them hitting tough shots. But like overall, and like Ken Pom won't take out his preseason factor for a little bit, like probably another couple weeks until we get that. But Missouri's already up to 72nd in adjusted defense. And like that's miles better than where they were last year. So like we said in the preseason that like the floor for this team was a lot higher than it was last year. I think that's showing right now. Even against these teams that like aren't very good, that they ultimately should be good defensively against.
Yeah, and then we will be here Thursday night to recap the Minnesota game. What are our early thoughts going into that one? And then we'll get Connor Vanover back, which is a big one. I expect him to start because it feels like the starting lineup it's changed each of the first 4 games. I wouldn't be shocked if we see maybe a starting lineup of Sean East, Noah Carter, Caleb Grill, Nick Honor, and Connor Vanover.
Minnesota's a pretty young team still. They'll rely on Dawson Garcia a lot, who's their all Big Ten caliber player. Minnesota native. Someone I'm super intrigued to watch is Cam Christie, who, he's a freshman. Didn't know how much he would play at like another Big Ten school, but he goes to Minnesota. He came off the bench for them in their game against UTSA last week. He had 18 points. He's a guy I saw play a lot in high school. Does a really good job kind of rising up over you and hit shots, can really shoot it. They're a team that I think has played a lot better than many, including myself.
I saw they scored 100 points against UTSA the other night.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough game. And, maybe this is a team that in the third year of Ben Johnson, they have a lot of younger players that are starting to figure out that system. I think, like, very slim chance I would have said in the preseason that this is a game Missouri loses just because of how bad Minnesota was last year. But they're playing a lot better basketball than I expected. And because of it, like, I think it's going to be a tough game. I think Mizzou's going to have to go in there and play well to win. And they're only a 1-point projected favorite right now.
Our friend Ken Pom has them as Minnesota is the number 97 team in the country.
So yeah, Minnesota.
This isn't a team in the 300s where I'm looking right now that like Southern Indiana and some other Missouri's opponents like South Carolina State, who they play next week. I cannot wait to watch that game at the same time as the Michigan Ohio State game, but that's a different story.
And I know I don't know how much you can get the Minnesota fan base to buy into these 2 games to start the season, but when the barn is full and it's amped up, it's really tough to go in there and win.
Yep, will be a tough test for Gates and the Tigers. Let's wrap up with 3 stars from last night's game. I think I went first last week, so you can take your first crack at a star.
Okay, I'll go Noah Carter for my star. 15 points, 10 rebounds last night. Also had around a 53 defensive rating, which if you don't know what that means, it's just the amount of points you're giving up per 100 possessions, which was the best on the team last night. So really impressed by him. His release is really quick on some of his threes.
Yeah, and he gets open too. He's a tall guy, so it's like have someone out there shooting threes like that is tough to contest. I'm gonna go with the simple answer. Sean East, 20 points, 8 of 11 from the field. Good defender, had I think a steal or 2, a couple 3-pointers. Has been the alpha of this team so far this season. And if he can keep up this pace, it could be an all SEC caliber year for Sean East. That is our podcast. We'll be back Thursday night to recap the Tigers and the Golden Gophers from Minnesota. I'm Harrison Vapnek. That's Jonathan Lidskin. See you next time on the Buckets and Brightside podcast.